Hello, AP students. I'm going to give you our first two words on part 2 of 3.2 part 1. All right, let's do a 2 for 1. Let's combine these ones. You can write this one down for Islamic States and Dar al-Islam. You can put these ones together as one term. All right, so the Islamic States, also known as Dar al-Islam. So the Islamic States or Dar al-Islam. This was basically, by definition, the Muslim world that spread all the way to West Africa, Middle East, Central Asia, India, and even into Southeast Asia. This was a united part of the world where the Islamic religion spread, where in many places there were Islamic caliphates that were both religious and political leaders. Very historically significant in the post-classical era, especially because this shows the rapid spread of Islam and how Islam became one of the dominant faiths in the world. And it was also able to spread by trade. Trade had a huge factor in the spread of Islam. So Dar al-Islam is basically the unified Muslim world. It was unified by the faith or the religion. Most of the people here spoke Arabic for trade purposes. Many of them did. And this was unified for religion, but also unified because there were many Muslim merchants, as we see in the Muslim diaspora in the Indian Ocean basin, for example. So it's Islamic States and Dar al-Islam. Our next term is Bedouins. As our reading says too, Bedouins were nomadic, polytheistic people who originally lived in Arabia and in North Africa. And these were people who converted to Islam. So they became more united by a faith and were no longer united by their bloodline or their tribe. Instead, they became united by their faith of Islam. And these were the first people to really spread Islam as it went from the Arabian Peninsula, right here, this is the Arabian Peninsula where Mecca is located, into North Africa and to many other parts of Dar al-Islam. So Bedouins were polytheistic Arabian people from the Arabian Peninsula who eventually converted to Islam and were very significant and because they were responsible for a lot of the early spread of Islam. The Caliph would be considered as a successor to Muhammad. Remember, Muhammad was the one who heard the message from the angel Gabriel and started Islam. A Caliph would be a person who was supposed to be like a deputy, since nobody could replace Muhammad in Islam. It's inconceivable that someone could. But you could pass it on to a deputy or someone else who would take over. So the Caliph was someone who took basically the leadership position in Islamic kingdoms, like the Umayyad and Abbasid Caliphate, for example. And this existed until 1924, so it existed until very recently. When the Ottoman Turks took it. We'll talk about more of them in our next era, the early modern period. But a caliph would be a leader, a religious and political Muslim leader who was following in the line of Muhammad, basically seen as a deputy or someone who was continuing the leadership of Islam in a religious and political sense. And this is especially significant in Dar al-Islam because this leader became very powerful in Islam since the Muslim faith was so strong and so powerful at this time. All right, Shia and Sunni Muslims. Now, this was a division that was based upon Sunni Muslims are the majority of Muslims today. They believe that the caliphs should be capable of doing the job, being the successors of Muhammad. They believe it just be the person who is best suited for the job. Where the Shia Muslims, they believe that the caliph should be related to Muhammad or in his bloodline. That's the major difference between Sunni and Shia Muslims. Also, what you want to know is today the majority of Muslims are Sunni Muslims and Shia Muslims are the minority. So there are 1.2 billion Sunni Muslims and 120 million Shia Muslims. So Sunni Muslims, they believe the caliphs should be capable of doing the job. They don't have to be related to Muhammad. Shia Muslims believe they should be related to Muhammad. This is historically significant because this is a split that happens in Islam And we still see this today, for example, in places like Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, where there are some conflicts that happen between Sunni and Shia Muslims. The Umayyad Caliphate. The Umayyad Caliphate was, we can see it right here, had a very large area and was able to conquer a lot of land. The Umayyad Caliphate from 661 to 750 really pushed the boundaries of Islam outside of Arabia. However, the Umayyad Caliphate was dominated by Arab Muslims from Arabia. And a lot of other Muslims did not like this because there was a sense of Arab superiority, or people from Arabia were superior in the Umayyad Caliphate. But they were very significant because they were able to expand the boundaries of Islam all the way, taking over Spain, we can see right here, in parts of Central Asia, and they were able to grow and expand the Islamic kingdom under the Caliph, the religious and political leader. Let's go to our next one, which would be the Abbasid Caliphate. Now, the Abbasid Caliphate was a little different because the Persians, or people from originally Persia, today Iran, were able to gain more power. They were very well known as being very good bureaucrats, being very good administrators. And the Abbasid Caliphate is able to last a lot longer than the Umayyad Caliphate. It is centered in the capital of Baghdad, which becomes a cultural flowering area, becomes a very strong cultural area, very good at trade. And the Abbasid Caliphates become very wealthy and have a lot of splendor and have a really good capital where they live in Baghdad. Historically significant as it becomes one of the main dominant powers in the post-classical era, and also very involved in the trade networks of this area, Silk Road, Indian Ocean trade route, and actually trans-Saharan as well, which is why they're able to become such a wealthy and stay as a powerful kingdom. Battle of Tours is a very historical, significant battle. Basically, what happens at the Battle of the Tours is the Franks, who, when we refer to Franks, we're going to come up to them a number of times in history. The Franks are basically Europeans. They are the ancestors of, for the most part, the French and the German people. Well, the Franks, who are Christians, are able to defeat the Muslims in southern France, northern Spain, and the Pyrenees, this area right here. I mean, it's basically southern France. They're able to defeat the Muslims, and this stops the Muslims from advancing into Europe. Had the Franks lost this battle, the Umayyad Caliphate could have potentially moved into Europe, and Europe, more territory, could have become part of the Islamic states, which would have had a huge significance historically. Just imagine, how much influence Europe has today. Europe's able to take over large amounts of land in the, especially in the early modern contemporary eras. So when we look at this, why it's significant is because this basically stops Europe from being taken over by the Muslim caliphates, which allows Europe to develop and grow stronger in later eras, for better or for worse for history. The Battle of Tours, where the Christians are able to defeat the Muslims and stop the Muslim advances into Europe. I say I went out of order there. I've already said Abbasid Caliphate. I hope you got that one down. Let's move on to Baghdad. All right, Baghdad. Baghdad was the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate. It is historically significant because it was a major city of culture and learning, a university center with hospitals, also had a lot of trade goods that were coming in and out, a center of knowledge where people came from around the world to study. Being centered at almost a perfect place where it had access to the Indian Ocean trade route, Silk Road trade route, and even trade from Africa with the trans-Saharan trade route, Baghdad grew and became one of the most powerful cities in the post-classical era. Significant for its education, its trade, and being just basically, Baghdad was one of the most powerful cities in the world in the post-classical era in the Abbasid Caliphate. The Mongol Khanates. All right, the Mongol Khanates, the first thing you want to know, extremely historically significant. They built the largest continuous land empire in human history. I mean, look at this. They take over most of Asia. I mean, it's insane. They even get into Europe. The amount of land that they're able to take is enormous. It is the largest land empire in the history of the world. They are known for many things. They're known for being brutal when they have to be brutal. If they take a city out, they're known to kill pretty much anyone in the city if they don't surrender to them, except for the people who they find the most useful. They take educated people and they bring them back and they want to get them to use their skills. The Mongols are very good at taking scientists of different faiths and making them work together. The Mongols have an organized system. They let other people join their army. They have a very strong military. And basically, they are tolerant to other beliefs. They allow people to have their own beliefs as long as they, support the Mongols. They're also known for Pax Mongolica, which is basically them taking the silk trade route and running it all the way across their empire, which does increase trade at this time. And they're even able to take over China with the Yuan, Y-U-A-N dynasty. The Yuan dynasty happens after the Song dynasty and lasts until the Ming dynasty. And they're able to get many of these goods from China and put them on the Silk Road and trade them all over the world, along with many of the goods from the Abbasid Caliphates or the Muslim world as well. And they're even able to take over a lot of that land as well, too. So the impact that the Mongols have in world history is through trade, through putting many leaders on thrones in different areas throughout their empire and in the future. They are, an army that will tolerate other people. The Mongols have a huge effect in the post-classical era. And their leader, Genghis Khan, was the person who united the Mongols, who weren't united, basically into one army, into one empire. So Genghis Khan was a brilliant military general who was able to organize the army. He was also known, when he would take over a tribe or other people, he would let them join his army, which made his army become bigger and even stronger. So Genghis Khan is also known for fathering a whole lot of children. It was one way to bring people into the Mongol Empire, was to take the queens or the women from other areas and then marry them, multiple wives, and then have a lot of kids to basically, they're Mongols now. It's possible that Genghis Khan there are 16 million people in the world who can claim Genghis Khan as an ancestor because of all the kids he had. Yeah, think about that for a minute. All right, very significant for uniting the Mongols together and starting one of the largest empires in human history, the largest land empire eventually in human history, which was taken over by his successors. Let's get into military organization. And let's combine this one together. So let's do military organization and Arban together. So Arban and military organization. So basically Arban, we can see it here. It is basically to break the power of tribal identity. So you're not just related to the people around you. Arban is basically taking people from different bloodlines or people from different areas, different tribes, and then mixing them together. So basically an Arban would be like, he would purposely take people and not have them all speak, the same language, be from the same culture, but he'd want to put different people together and say, you're now in the Arban, you're going to live together, you're going to fight together, you're going to do everything together. And eventually this broke down tribal loyalties, because then the Mongol Empire, you are more loyal to your Arban, which was a very diverse group of people, than you were loyal to your own ethnic group of the people whom you belonged to. And eventually became irrelevant. The tribes didn't really fight together anymore because they weren't together anymore. Another genius thing about the Arbans was they were broken up into groups of 10. So you'd have 10 people in there, and then 10 would become 100, would become 1,000. So the army was organized, and it was a well-moving machine where everyone knew their role. Okay, next word and our last one, arrow messengers. In the Mongol army, they were able to communicate through arrow messengers. These were fast riders who would ride their horses as fast as possible and go to 20 miles, get to the next person, they would go 20 miles, go to the next person, they would go 20 miles, and they were able to communicate and get messages across throughout the empire very fast, especially when they would come and attack. And they had the advantage on getting information from place to place in the military much faster than their opponents could, especially if they wanted to do a surprise attack or if they wanted to make changes. And these arrow messengers were significant because they helped lead the Mongol armies to victory because of their better communication. get to our next video after this one to finish it up. We'll have one more video.